This is the last moment of Jess Hurrell, the woman who made homes more beautiful than magazines while quietly carrying a burden no one could see. Her smile, legendary. Her energy, unstoppable. Her secret, almost no one knew. For 8 years, Jess battled privately, and with grace. And when the news of her passing broke, even those closest to her online world were left in disbelief. Jess Hurrell wasn't just an interiors influencer. She was a force. To her thousands of followers, she was. The creative mind behind Gold is a neutral, a space full of inspiration, elegance, and warmth. But to her husband, her 2 children, and a close circle of friends, she was something else. A quiet warrior, laughing through the pain, dancing through the darkness, and somehow still lifting others while she herself was falling. She shared everything: paint colors, layout tips, sofa dilemmas. But what she didn't share was the storm that raged inside. There were no "I am not feeling well today" posts. No, "Sorry, I've been" quiet captions. Because Jess didn't want sympathy. She wanted to live. Fully. Fiercely. Quietly. When the Instagram post came, the one confirming she had passed away after an 8-year battle, many couldn't believe it. Not just because she was young, not just because she was full of life, but because no one knew behind the reels of laughter, the behind the scenes of cushions and color palettes, was a woman who decided that her private struggle would not define her public joy. A woman who skipped, smiled, and powered through life until the very end. But this story isn't just about illness. It's about a decision to protect beauty, even when reality was anything but, a decision to inspire when she could have withdrawn. This video isn't just about Jess Hurrell, the influencer. It's about Jess Hurrell, the woman, and the final years of her life that no one truly saw. Because sometimes the strongest people are the ones who don't tell you they're fine, long before hashtags and home tours. Jess Hurrell was just a girl from Yorkshire, with a notebook full of words and a hunger for storytelling. She didn't begin her journey in the world of interiors. She started in showbiz, chronicling red carpet interviews, late-night premieres, and celebrity scandals as a journalist. It was fast, flashy, exciting. But over time, the glitz began to dull, and something softer began to call her name. London became her stage. Not the kind with bright lights and cameras, but one made of living rooms, cozy corners, and color palettes that whispered home. It was here that Jess transformed not just her career, but her life. She started her blog, Gold as a Neutral, during a moment of stillness, a pause between motherhood, freelance writing, and a deeper need to connect. The name of her blog wasn't just a style statement. It was a metaphor. Gold. Bold. Beautiful. Luminous. Neutral. Balanced. Calm. Grounded. And Jess was always both. Her style wasn't just aspirational. It was attainable. She didn't preach trends. She invited people into a world where creativity lived alongside chaos, where parenting messes and mid-century lamps coexisted in harmony. Her voice was warm, relatable, full of light, and that light kept growing. But while her online persona shined with throw cushions and wall colors, offline, a silent narrative was forming, one that very few ever glimpsed. The time in which Jess rose to online fame was both a boom and a blur. And the late 2010 seconds and early 2020 seconds were the golden era of lifestyle influencers. Platforms like Instagram turned everyday women into global guides. Home wasn't just where the heart was, it was where your brand lived. And Jess built hers beautifully. She became a quiet icon in the interiors world, but not through controversy. Not through gimmicks, through calm, consistency, authenticity. And therein lies the paradox. While many influencers built personas that demanded attention, Jess did the opposite. She whispered in a world of shouting. She created peace in a space of performance. And she shared beauty while silently carrying something brutal. She never made her illness part of the brand. Never used her vulnerability to fuel engagement. Instead, she created a haven for herself and her followers. But hidden inside all that warmth was a quiet storm. One that shaped her choices, her pace, her absence from events others took for granted. One that, if you looked closely, left traces a sudden gap between posts, a caption with slightly too much hope, a photo where the eyes knew something the mouth wouldn't say. This is the layer few explored, because Jess didn't invite them in. But now, after her final post on her family's farewell, and the wave of shock across the community were left not just with sadness, but with a question: what does it mean to live fully while preparing to leave quietly? This story is not about a woman who lost. It's about a woman who chose what to reveal and what to protect until the very end. Ting. They just keep showing up. She didn't begin as a brand. She began as a writer, one who could capture the essence of a moment with the ease of conversation and the sharpness of lived experience. Jess Hurrell knew how to tell stories long before she ever turned a camera on her living room. But her rise as an interiors influencer didn't happen overnight. It happened in between school runs, nap times, quiet evenings on the sofa with a laptop and a flicker of inspiration. While the world chased viral fame, Jess built something slower and far more lasting. That her blog, Gold, is a neutral spoke to women who weren't just interested in how a room looked but how it felt. The warmth of a lived-in kitchen, the joy of rearranging furniture on a quiet Sunday, the art of making a house into a home without losing your mind or your soul. Her audience grew not from shock value or sponsored giveaways, but because people trusted her. And behind that trust was a woman juggling more than design dilemmas. She was raising 2 children, Rafferty and Nellie, while quietly navigating a personal health battle that she had chosen not to share with the world. Because that was the thing about Jess. Her strength didn't need to be broadcast to be real. Behind the curtain of her curated posts, there were days of pain, hospital visits tucked in between paint samples, moments when the fatigue was louder than the joy. But still, she showed up, not out of obligation, but out of love, and that's what makes her story different. There was no fall from grace, no public unraveling. Instead, there was a subtle shift, a missed collaboration, a postponed project, a little more quiet between the posts, and for those who watched closely, perhaps a deeper softness in her words. But no one asked, and she never offered. Because Jess had made a decision early on, her followers were not there to carry her burdens. They were there to be lifted. And so she did. Even when it hurt. Even when the treatments stacked up and the timelines blurred. Even when her own energy dimmed. That's the part most never saw. Because Jess didn't want to be seen as the brave one or the sick one. She wanted to be seen as herself. And so, while others may have turned their pain into content, Jess turned hers into quiet resilience. She chose to keep her digital world intact, even when her real world was growing more fragile. And when the moment finally came, when her family shared the heartbreaking truth that she had passed after an 8-year battle, it wasn't met with scandal or shock. It was met with silence. The kind of silence that fills a room after you realize something beautiful is gone. Followers scrolled through her last posts, looking for clues. Some found none. Others found everything: a smile that seemed a little tired, a caption that now read like a goodbye, an image that captured more than just lighting. It captured strength. Jess didn't fall. She faded, gently, silently, and with extraordinary grace. And in doing so, she left something behind that no algorithm could ever measure: a legacy of light, not just in her home, but in the way she made others feel seen, heard, inspired. She never asked for sympathy. And yet, in the days after her passing, it came pouring in. Not just condolences, but gratitude. Because Jess reminded people that even in a world obsessed with perfection, there is power in authenticity. That even when you're going through your hardest battle, you can still choose to bring joy. And that sometimes the strongest people are the quietest ones. They say that silence can speak louder than words. And in the case of Jess Hurrell, it became her most powerful legacy. While her online presence continued to glow with carefully curated corners of her home, the truth lived somewhere else behind the lens, away from the grids, in the quiet corners of private life. For 8 years, Jess carried a secret not because she wanted to deceive her followers, but because she wanted to protect them from worry, from sorrow, from watching her transform into someone defined by an illness instead of by her ideas, her light, her love for interiors and family. Her closest friends knew. Of course, her family stood by her side through every scan, every treatment, every good day, and every crushing one. But even they would later say, she didn't want the world to see her pain, and she made sure they didn't until the very end. The post came on a Friday. Simple, devastating. We are heartbroken to say that Jess passed away after an 8-year battle with cancer. Her family wrote, her positive energy was infectious. And just like that, the truth became public, but too late for anyone to tell her what she had truly meant to them. The comments flooded in. People who had never met Jess felt gutted, as if a friend had suddenly gone missing. Others scrolled back through years of posts, rereading captions with new eyes. What once seemed like casual optimism now rang with quiet courage. One follower wrote, "How can someone I've never met make me cry like this? She made every space feel like home, even when we didn't know hers was hurting." And there it was. The heartbreak not just of her passing, but of the realization that she had suffered in silence, that she had laughed while in pain, that she had created beauty from the ruins of her own body. A friend described her as the person who made every party better just by being there. Another, she never made it about her, but now I wish she had. Just once, so we could have held her the way she held us. Her husband, David, left a message that shattered many on what would have been their wedding anniversary. He wrote, "Happy anniversary, darling. I can't believe we didn't make it to 14. But I had the most incredible 25 years. Sleep tight. No hashtags. No emojis. Just love. Raw and simple." What most people never knew is that Jess' decision to remain silent wasn't about shame. It was about choice. In a digital age where every struggle becomes content, Jess chose dignity. She didn't hide the truth to create a lie. She kept it quiet to preserve what mattered most to her: joy. She didn't want her audience to associate her page with pain. She wanted them to find hope, calm, and creativity, and even in her final days, she stayed loyal to that mission. But it raises the question, one that followers continue to debate even now. Did we fail her? Did our hunger for light, for cheerfulness, for positivity, make her feel she had to hide the darkness? Or was Jess simply stronger than we ever gave her credit for? In retrospect, there were signs. A few months of slowed posting, the subtle change in her eyes, even as her smile stayed bright. A rare caption that hinted at tougher days without elaboration. But no one pried. Out of respect, out of love. Out of not wanting to believe that someone so full of life could also be full of quiet suffering. That's the cruel truth behind many online lives. We see the curated, not the complete. Jess knew that. She used it, but not to mislead, to inspire, and perhaps that is her greatest act of strength. The day after the announcement, people all across the interiors community began posting tributes, photos of candles lit for her, rooms decorated in gold, the color she made iconic, captions filled with phrases like, "Thank you for everything," and "You made my house a home." In the end, it wasn't the diagnosis that defined her, it was the choice to keep going, to raise her children with laughter, to love her husband without fear, to offer her community beauty, even as she faced something brutal. That's what makes Jess' story not just tragic but breathtakingly human. And now, we are left with the silence she has left behind. A silence full of meaning, full of gratitude, full of the kind of admiration that only grows after someone is gone. Because Jess Hurrell didn't just decorate homes, she decorated lives. There are stories that pass through us, and stories that stay. Jess Hurrell's is the latter. As a channel devoted to uncovering the hidden truths behind public lives, we're often asked, where is the line between privacy and persona, between what is shared and what remains sacred? Jess drew that line with striking clarity. She lived in an era where sharing every detail was expected, especially online. Yet, she chose silence over sympathy. She chose to let her followers see light, even when her world was getting darker. That wasn't deception. That was grace. And for that, she earned not only admiration but reverence. In reviewing her journey, we find ourselves reflecting on more than just her content. We think about the responsibility we place on public figures to always be real, when sometimes realness is not about exposure, but restraint. Jess wasn't trying to protect a brand, and she was trying to protect her peace. And in doing so, she protected ours too. But her silence also exposes something unsettling about digital culture. Would she have been judged if she had shared more? Would the engagement have gone up, or would the empathy have worn off too quickly? These are questions we can't answer. But we must ask, because in Jess's story lies a mirror, not just of a woman who fought a private battle, but of a society that often demands openness without offering true understanding in return. Still, we must be careful not to romanticize her silence. Choosing not to speak was her right, but it shouldn't have been her burden. Perhaps, if the world was more tender, she could have been more transparent. Perhaps not. That is the complexity of Jess Hurrell, one we may never fully understand. What we do know is this: Jess left behind more than memories. She left a challenge, a call to reconsider what strength really looks like, and a reminder that not every brave act comes with an announcement, and most importantly, a legacy that redefines how we view influence, not as performance, but as presence. to those who followed her. She was more than an influencer. She was a quiet compass in chaotic times. To her family, she was a universe. And to us, she is now a story we carry forward with care, with love, and with questions. So we ask you, the viewer, what do you believe Jess was trying to protect? What would you have done in her place? And do you think silence can sometimes speak the loudest of truths? There are stories that never made headlines. Stories that unfolded quietly, softly, behind curtains drawn not from shame, but from love. Jess Hurrell's story is one of them. She didn't ask to be remembered as someone who was unwell. She wanted to be remembered for the way she lived, the joy she sparked in others, the rooms she made warmer, the homes she made braver, the quiet she made golden. And now, she is gone, but not lost. Her blog still stands. Her posts still speak. Her captions, once just decorating tips or thoughts on layout, now read like love letters to life. And maybe that's the most beautiful twist of all. That someone who never said goodbye out loud left us hundreds of whispered ones. And we scroll through her photos, not to mourn her, but to feel closer. We revisit her ideas not because we need design help, but because we want to be near the spirit of someone who made life more tender, more thoughtful, more true. In a time when digital presence often fades as quickly as it appears, Jess continues to glow. Not because of algorithms or trends, but because of the human imprint she left behind. The kind you can't edit, the kind that lingers. For those who knew her personally, the silence she chose was a shield. For those who followed her, it became a mystery. And for all of us now, it becomes a memory, a quiet, golden thread woven into the fabric of those she touched. There are stories that never made it to the front page, but they made it into our hearts. And sometimes, that's where the most important ones belong. Because in the end, Jess Hurrell reminded us of something we too often forget: that quiet doesn't mean empty. That absence doesn't mean forgotten. That grace lives in the smallest acts of strength. And that sometimes, the most powerful stories are the ones whispered in gold.